For over 60 years, when you think of American masculinity, morality, and pure grit, one name comes to mind: Clint Eastwood. He's the man with no name, the quiet avenger from all those westerns. He's Dirty Harry, the cop who plays by his own rules. He's the acclaimed director with 4 Oscars to his name for unforgettable films like Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby. By any measure, Clint Eastwood is a living legend, a man who didn't just reflect American culture. He helped define it. His career is a masterclass in ambition and control. But, as we've learned time and again, the brightest stars often cast the darkest shadows. And Clint Eastwood's story is way more complex and far more troubling than the movies ever let on. For decades, Clint Eastwood has been Hollywood's ultimate tough guy, an icon, a legend. But a shocking new biography is exposing the dark side of that legacy. It paints a picture of alleged psychological abuse, constant cheating, and a pattern of manipulation aimed squarely at the women in his life. This is the story of the book that's finally exposing Clint Eastwood. To understand the impact of these new revelations, you first have to remember the man everyone thinks they know. Clint Eastwood's rise wasn't an accident. It was as slow and deliberate as the characters he played. Born during the Great Depression, he bounced between odd jobs from logger to lifeguard before a couple of lucky breaks got his foot in Hollywood's door. He used the TV series Rawhide as his personal film school, learning the industry he would one day rule. Then came a call from an Italian director named Sergio Leone. The spaghetti westerns, A Fistful of Dollars, or A Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly blew up in Europe and eventually America, making Eastwood a global superstar. He was the new face of the western, quiet, deadly, just plain cool. But Eastwood was never going to be just an actor. He hated studio rules and started his own production company, El Paso, to get the one thing he always wanted: control. He got behind the camera to direct his first movie, Play Misty for Me, in 1971. That same year, he created another icon with Dirty Harry, a character so powerful that even his biggest critics couldn't deny the film's impact. This was the Eastwood formula: give the people what they wanted, but on his terms. He became famous for his efficiency: fast, disciplined, and almost always under budget, which made him a treasure for studios like Warner Brothers, where he's had a partnership for over 50 years. His career hit the ultimate Hollywood peak when he won Best Director and Best Picture for the western Unforgiven in 1992. Incredibly, he did it again 13 years later with the heartbreaking boxing drama $1 Million Baby. He became one of the most respected figures in film history, the embodiment of the American dream. That's the myth. The reality, as one book now argues, is much darker. In early October 2025, the respected film historian Sean Levy released Clint Eastwood, the icon, the man, and the movies. It wasn't the first biography of Eastwood, but Levy claimed his was the middle ground, somewhere between the books that worshipped him and those that trashed him. It promised to celebrate the artist while finally acknowledging the flaws in the man. But in seeking that balance, the book uncovered a pattern of behavior so disturbing that it threatens to wreck Eastwood's entire public image. Using deep research and interviews, some with Eastwood himself, the 560-page biography paints a portrait of a man obsessed with control, especially over women. It details decades of what it calls sexual miscreancy and alleged cruelty that flies in the face of his heroic persona. The book became the one document that gathered decades of rumors and presented them as a single damning story. The book doesn't just list scandals, it connects the dots to show a man who seemed to believe the rules didn't apply to him. First, there was the sheer scale of his infidelity. It was never a total secret that Eastwood's personal life was messy. He has at least 8 children with 6 different women. But Levy's biography shows how bold it was, portraying a man who admitted he acted like a bachelor all through his first marriage to Maggie Johnson. In one 1963 interview, Eastwood said, "One thing Mag had to learn about me was that I was going to do as I pleased. If she didn't, we wouldn't be married." The book claims he had affairs everywhere, from acting classes to studio lots. He even had a child, Kimber, with another woman while he was still married to Maggie. This pattern just kept repeating. While he was in a long-term live-in relationship with actress Sandra Locke, he secretly had 2 more children, Scott and Catherine, with a flight attendant. Locke herself said she had no idea he was cheating on her constantly. The book argues this wasn't just a guy having affairs. This was a man building entire secret lives, carefully keeping them separate to protect his image, no matter who he hurt. But the most explosive parts of the book are about his 14-year relationship with Sandra Locke, which is described as toxic and abusive. They moved in together in 1975 and were a Hollywood power couple, making 6 movies together. But Locke's own memoir, now backed up by Levy's biography, tells a story of total control and betrayal. Locke claimed that Eastwood talked her into having 2 abortions and getting her tubes tied, saying he didn't want more kids. Finding out he was having children with someone else during that same time felt like a sick manipulation. When they finally broke up in 1989, it got ugly. Locke came home one day to find that Eastwood had changed the locks on their house and had her things packed away in storage. She sued him. In court, Eastwood reportedly tried to downplay their relationship, calling her a part-time roommate. They settled, but Locke later sued him again for fraud. She claimed a directing deal he set up for her at Warner Brothers was a total sham, just a trick to get her to drop the first lawsuit. For 3 years, every single project she pitched was rejected by the studio. Locke eventually won a settlement, but her directing career was finished. She was convinced Eastwood's power had blacklisted her from Hollywood. And strangely, this theme of public deception has followed Eastwood into 2025. He's won millions in lawsuits against CBD companies that used his name to create fake articles and interviews to sell their products. These scams falsely claimed Eastwood was quitting Hollywood for the CBD business. Then, in June 2025, an Austrian newspaper, Courier, published what it called an exclusive interview in which Eastwood trashed modern Hollywood. The story went viral, but Eastwood's team had to release a statement calling it entirely phony and completely fabricated. The paper later admitted a freelancer had just stitched together old quotes. While Eastwood wasn't behind these deceptions, it's a weird echo of how his own public image was a carefully constructed story that hid a very different reality. So, how does this change how we see his work? It's hard to watch his films the same way. When the man with no name commits a brutal act in High Plains Drifter, a scene a critic at the time said served no purpose, you have to wonder if you're seeing a glimpse of something darker. When he directs these complex movies about suffering women, you're now forced to square that with the stories of control from his real life. Does that stoic, silent masculinity he perfected on screen look different now, knowing about the alleged chaos behind the scenes? The films are still masterpieces. Unforgiven is still a brilliant take on violence and myth. $1 Million Baby is still absolutely devastating, but the man who made them is no longer a simple icon. He is, as Levy's book suggests, a man of huge contradictions, a celebrated artist whose personal life is allegedly filled with wreckage. The legacy of Clint Eastwood is now a battleground. On one side, you have the icon, the movie star, the master filmmaker, the symbol of American strength. On the other hand, you have the man in the book, a figure accused of being a serial cheater, a manipulator, and someone who used his power to control the women in his life. The book isn't asking us to stop watching his movies. It's forcing a more complicated, more honest conversation. It suggests we can accept 2 things at once: that someone can be a brilliant artist and also a deeply flawed person. The myth of Clint Eastwood, carefully built over 60 years, has been cracked. In its place is a much more complicated and much more troubling picture. And it leaves us all with a tough question. Now that you've heard the allegations, does this change how you see Clint Eastwood and his films? Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you found this story interesting, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden histories of Hollywood.